On the first day of lab, the thing I'd be most nervous about was that I knew enough anatomical information. As a TA, I have a duty to students, faculty, and my fellow TAs to understand as much information as possible. The students rely on me to perform well in the lab portion of the course. The faculty rely on me to connect the dots between lab and lecture. And my fellow TAs rely on me because if I don't know enough information, they'll have to pick up the slack. I don't believe this nervousness would be a negative though, as when I am nervous, I tend to memorize information better. I know this from personal experience. One thing I'd be very excited about would be getting to meet so many new faces. I love meeting people, I love learning names, and I love talking to others. It's my favorite thing in the world, especially people who I hope love anatomy as much as I do. If a student came up to me at the start of MSK, panicked about how they were gonna memorize so much information, I'd tell them to breathe and that they'll be okay. I'd also tell them they're not alone. At the start of MSK, I had no idea how I was gonna memorize so much information, and I wasn't alone either. But once I was able to develop good study habits and use proper study techniques, I was able to do quite well, and so are many other students. The first piece of advice I would give this student is that anatomy is not a rote memorization course. It's far better to understand things conceptually. What I mean by this, take the short head of biceps brachii, for example. One way to memorize it would be to memorize the origin, the insertion, its function, all the qualities of the muscle. The other way to memorize it would be it originates on the coracoid process, inserts on the radial tuberosity, and then imagining how my forearm will move as this muscle shortens and understanding what flexion at the elbow and supination means. This line of thinking is far more effective, particularly for answering second order questions, which is what will make the difference between an A and a B and could make the difference between a B and a C. The second piece of advice I would give this student is to find some way to regurgitate the information. I believe the buzzword is active recall, basically any way you can quiz yourself. Personally, I primarily use Anki, an online computer program. It's free, quite popular with med students, sure you've heard of it. I also would plug in my lecture notes into AI and have them make quizzes for me. I saw many students make flashcards by hand. I did that a few times. I'd write stuff out on a whiteboard. Basically, any way to get the information, to quiz myself and see what I didn't understand. And on top of that, the other thing I would recommend, which is almost more important, is repetitive studying. It's far better to study, say, 30 minutes, an hour a day, every day, the week leading up to an exam, as opposed to studying 5 hours the night before. If I accidentally cut through the median nerve after being clearly instructed by Dr. Knigge not to do so, first, I would immediately contact Dr. Knigge and explain to him exactly what happened. Next, I would pause and listen to him for further direction. Afterwards, I would apologize because an error like this one is a serious mistake that should not be taken lightly. It's disrespectful to the donors, faculty, students, and my fellow TAs. These donors made the conscious decision to donate their bodies to the university so that students could learn, and an error like this one directly impedes that. Also, like a true Midwesterner, I apologize for everything, including breathing. Later that day, I would try to identify why I made such an error and put systems in place so it didn't happen again. Was I not clearly listening to Dr. Knigge's direction? Did I not double check that I was making the correct incision? Was I unsure of my task but chose not to ask for clarification? Whatever the reason, I would not want it to happen again. For example, if I wasn't clearly listening to Dr. Knigge's direction, in the following lab session, as Dr. Knigge was explaining our directions, I would repeat them back to myself to ensure that I had a clear understanding of what I was supposed to do and make sure that I did not make an error like that one again. If a student had a question about the brain and I was unsure of the answer, then I would find the answer, whether that would be through asking another TA or hopping on a computer and going to Google. My response after that would depend on the question. If the question was pertaining to lab material, such as the location differences between Broca and Wernicke's area, then after lab, I would review that information and ensure I had a solid understanding. If the question was about lecture material or something outside of the class entirely, I would get really excited because I'm about to learn something. If a student was making disparaging comments about Lupita in our lab, which is so rude, I would immediately tell them that Lupita slander will not be tolerated and that she's a beautiful creature who deserves the utmost respect. I'd also remind them that they should be thanking Lupita for her lovely break stations during lab practical exams. I would then ask the student if they're a nerd like me who wants to know more about raccoons, And if they are, then I would tell them that currently raccoons are experiencing early signs of domestication. A recent study done at the University of Arkansas at Little Rock found that raccoons in urban environments have a 3.56% smaller snout length when compared to their rural counterparts. This finding supports the neural crest domestication syndrome hypothesis, which is kind of a mouthful, that states that domestication traits such as tameness, floppy ears, and shorter snout lengths are linked to genetic changes in embryonic neural crest cells. I think this finding would be particularly interesting during Unit 2 when we're learning about nervous system and the brain. It's important to note that this finding does not mean that raccoons are going to be fully domesticated anytime soon, which honestly is really sad because they're so adorable. I would also tell the student that if they find a injured or orphan raccoon, that they should contact the Minnesota Center for Wildlife Rehabilitation to get that animal the help it needs, and that it's really important to take care of the animals in our city and our community. And yeah, it's basically what I would say. I'd educate them on what I just learned going down a little raccoon rabbit hole for this prompt. Hi, Dr. Rowe. For the last 2 minutes about myself, I like to spend them explaining my favorite concept in music theory, the secondary dominant. And I'm going to use Billy Joel's song Piano Man to do so. While secondary dominant sounds very complicated, it's actually somewhat simple. I want you to think of one thing: tension. In music, we're going to build and release tension. The secondary dominant uses a distance between notes called a fifth, and the fifth builds and releases a lot of tension. Listen, if I play a chord here, and then I play another chord a fifth away, it builds tension. When I play the one chord again, that tension is released. What Billy Joel's song does is it uses a secondary dominant, which is when a fifth is played off of a different note. In the case of his song, he plays a fifth of a fifth. And what this does is it builds and releases lots of tension. Listen, if I play this chord, and I play this chord, very funky chord, lots of tension, and I go here, the tension is released, but then when I go here, even more tension is released. It's very satisfying to listen to. Here it is in the context of the song. So we start here, just go through some chords, pretty simple. Just go on a little journey, you know? Here comes the secondary dominant. Funky, here. The tension's released, but we still have some more tension. And you listen at the end, all the tension's released. It's kind of like a breath of fresh air, you know? It's very nice. I love that. I think it's really fun. I remember learning about it in high school. I love the secondary dominant. And I'd also like to thank you, Dr. Rowe, for watching my video and giving me the opportunity to interview. I loved your class so much. It was so fun, and it'd be awesome to be a TA. The TAs were so cool. I loved getting to know them. Thank you so much for watching, 30 times 6 hours of video. That's a long time. So have a great day. Bye-bye.